Nintendo has an interesting plan for Diddy Kong in both Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and yes, it looks like it. It looks like there is something going on here. Something is brewing. Many Donkey Kong fans are also fans of Diddy Kong, and Diddy Kong has not been shown in either Donkey Kong Bonanza or Mario Kart World. But the Nintendo Switch 2 and Mario Kart World just came out, and there are some things that have popped up that seem to be supporting this idea that there is indeed some kind of plan tying in both Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza together, which may also incorporate the return of Diddy Kong, which is what I would like to dive into this time. But before going forward, let me point out I'm aiming for a goal of 60,000 subscribers. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So now that the Switch 2 and Mario Kart World are out, a lot of people are talking about how both Donkey Kong and also Pauline only have 2 costumes each. And many people think this is rather weird. In the case of Pauline, maybe you could argue it away because she's not that important of a character, but she has less costumes than Rosalina, and I then ask myself, is she really that much less important than Rosalina? Debatably, however, in Mario Kart Tour, Pauline has 4 different costumes, and yet in World, she only has 2. But again, maybe you can simply argue they just didn't want to put that much focus on Pauline with costumes, at least at launch for Mario Kart World. But when it comes to Donkey Kong, I don't really think you can explain this away in any way that makes any sense outside of it just being weird. Donkey Kong is an extremely important character throughout Nintendo history. First of all, Donkey Kong, or Donkey Kong Jr., has always been a part of the Mario Kart roster, the main primary roster. And Donkey Kong, compared to all the other main characters from the roster, has far less. It is extremely strange to just have these 2, his base costume and then his alternate costume. Donkey Kong is an important character throughout the history of Nintendo. The original Donkey Kong arcade cabinet is what allowed Nintendo to break out into the West and become as popular as they are today. They might have stayed like a pretty niche company if it wasn't for Donkey Kong. So Donkey Kong's extremely important to the history of Nintendo. Donkey Kong's always been a part of the main Mario Kart roster, and it's extremely evident that Nintendo's pushing Donkey Kong very hard. We have Seth Rogen playing as Donkey Kong in the Mario movie. We know the Mario movie has a sequel coming up, and Donkey Kong will likely play a role in that, a substantial one. But we also have Super Nintendo World, and its first expansion is the Donkey Kong Park expansion, so that alone is already extremely substantial. But of course, we recently just got Donkey Kong Country Returns HD in January, but perhaps most importantly, one of the biggest key titles to the launch window of Nintendo Switch 2 is Donkey Kong Bonanza. It's coming out next month, a 3D platformer. It's an impressive game, and it seems everything that's been happening with Donkey Kong has been leading to this moment, the release of Bonanza. So clearly Nintendo's pushing Donkey Kong hard here. They're not trying to push Donkey Kong away from the spotlight. So to see that there are only 2 costumes for Donkey Kong in Mario Kart World, it's absolutely a head scratcher. Unless you consider another possibility here, that Nintendo has a plan to update Mario Kart World relatively soon, and it ties into some cross promotion for Donkey Kong Bonanza coming out next month. Which brings me to some recent statements we got from Mario Kart World producer Kosuke Yabuki, where he was asked about Diddy Kong being involved with Mario Kart World, and all he said was, "I'm afraid I can't say anything at this time." That wording is not denying or deconfirming the presence of Diddy Kong in Mario Kart World. What it's actually doing is saying that he can't say anything at this time, implying that there's something going on behind the scenes that he's not at liberty to speak of, some sort of plan where maybe even NDAs were signed. Of course, he is a key member to the Mario Kart World team. He's not going to spoil a significant announcement that's to come after the launch of Mario Kart World. And it seems we have even more evidence that there are some plans for Mario Kart World after launch. Because in another interview, Yabuki was also asked about 200cc, And he ultimately said, "I'm afraid I can't say just yet." Emphasis on yet. That's the key word here. It suggests that there is some kind of plan that cannot be revealed yet in regards to updates to Mario Kart World. Now, when speaking about 200cc, 200cc was a free update to Mario Kart 8 back on Wii U early on into its life after launch, post-launch. And so it seems when examining these comments from Yabuki about both Diddy Kong and 200cc, it looks like Nintendo likely has some kind of plan in terms of providing updates for Mario Kart World. And that really shouldn't be too surprising of a revelation here, because a lot of Nintendo games, or just video games in general, especially the more substantial ones from bigger companies, see updates post-launch. Now, what kinds of updates those are, that's where there's a lot more debate, and we have to kind of think about each situation. But given that even Mario Kart 8 had different updates that came out post-launch back on Wii U and even on Switch with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, we should also expect updates to Mario Kart World, and not necessarily just paid updates, but free updates as well. We've seen free updates on Wii U and on Switch with 8 Deluxe. So with World being the premier launch title for Switch 2 and the history of Mario Kart being a strong seller, especially Mario Kart 8 Deluxe being one of the greatest sellers of all time, Nintendo likely has a plan for World to continue to be a big, key part to their overall sales strategy, maintaining evergreen success, and likely they already have a plan in place to further support this where there will be continued updates, keeping the game as relevant as possible. Some of that may include 200cc, some of that may include the inclusion of other characters, such as Diddy Kong. And listen, I've gone over how it's apparent that Nintendo cares about Donkey Kong and how Nintendo's pushing Donkey Kong hard, but Diddy Kong, you could perhaps make an argument that Nintendo's trying to shy away from Diddy Kong. There is that whole P. Diddy controversy, and a lot of people have theorized that the reason why Nintendo's been so quiet about Diddy Kong is because they want to shy away from this character because of that controversy. They don't want people to conflate the two. While I'm sure Nintendo doesn't want the people to conflate the two, personally, I don't think you can really conflate them. Just because one person has a name doesn't mean a name should be just never used ever again. I think that's a bit extreme. I think everyone knows who Diddy Kong is, and there's not really much room left for confusion there. And if you don't want to take my opinion for it, that's fine. We already have some pretty substantial evidence to support this idea that Nintendo is not shying away from Diddy Kong, because guess what? Recently, Nintendo has released a variety of new renders for both Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. Diddy Kong is featured in a lot of new promotional material now in regards to just the overall Donkey Kong series and the opening of the Donkey Kong Park expansion to Super Nintendo World. Diddy Kong is being featured as a prominent character in the DK series, the companion to Donkey Kong, the number 2 of the series. So Diddy Kong is still clearly important to the overall franchise of Donkey Kong. And then we look at Bananza, and we've talked about in various videos how there are a variety of different references to prior Donkey Kong games in Bananza. It's clear that the developers of Bananza are very well aware of the entire history, not just games made by internal Nintendo, but also the rare-made Donkey Kong games, and they are throwing in a great deal of references, some extremely subtle, some not so subtle. We have the whole "oh banana" thing, where Donkey Kong literally says that when he collects a banana, but we also have characters like Rambi, Cranky Kong, designs made by Rare. We have the barrels, the mine carts, so many references to the Donkey Kong Country series, but one of the biggest creations from the Country series is Diddy Kong. So when we have a game that's making really subtle references to the maps of the different areas in the Donkey Kong Country games, I'm sure the developers of Bananza are also very well aware of the most important new character from that series, which is Diddy Kong. And actually, we look at Bananza, and there's quite a few different monkeys that seem to share a very similar form to what Diddy Kong would be. So given that they already have these models, there wouldn't be that much extra legwork to make sure there's some kind of incorporation of Diddy Kong. And going back to when I mentioned Cranky Kong, if we're already seeing Cranky Kong, it feels like we're going to have to see some other Kongs that are closer to home and not just random Kongs that we've never seen before. So I think it's already been a reasonable expectation to think that Diddy Kong is a fantastic chance to show up at least to some capacity in Donkey Kong Bananza, but I'll go a step further here. there is potential for more. We know that Rambi seems to likely play at least some role to the gameplay, because in conversations we've seen with Cranky Kong, Rambi, the rhino, in case you don't know who Rambi is, has this icon that we've seen from different Mario titles, which this game seems to share some similarities to, tends to mean that character has something to do with the story or the gameplay, or a bit of both. My overall point here is that if we have characters like Rambi being involved, Diddy Kong seems even more likely. And the fact of the matter is, we don't know that much about Bananza yet. Bananza comes out next month, and we really are about a month and a half away, and between now and then, odds are there is going to be some kind of Nintendo Direct presentation where Nintendo will provide updates on a variety of games coming to Switch 2, almost certainly including Donkey Kong Bananza, the next big release next month, where we'll likely learn a lot more. And so with this assumed presentation in mind, given the history of things, how there's always a presentation of some kind in the June period, and also the need for more announcements on what's to come for Switch 2 post-launch, I think it's safe to say that Nintendo is planning some future announcements having to do with both Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bananza. In the next Direct, I wouldn't be surprised if they announce some updates to Mario Kart World, and also give us more info on Donkey Kong Bananza, and these announcements could be related. They may be separate, but perhaps related, because if there are only 2 costumes for DK and Pauline, perhaps they will be adding more of those costumes in the not-so-distant future in a free update as cross-promotion for Bananza. Now you might be wondering, okay, Donkey Kong makes sense, but what about Pauline? Well, Pauline, interestingly, if you don't know her origin story, was originally, the original Pauline, was in the original Donkey Kong. She is the original damsel in distress that was saved by Mario, or Jumpman. Now we can have a whole conversation about the different generations of Donkey Kong, Mario, and Pauline, but the point is, that is her origin. So Pauline has close ties to the Donkey Kong series, not just Mario. But also, we have seen a leak from Nintendo of Korea, an official Nintendo page, where there is a piece of key art of Donkey Kong Bananza where we see DK, yet instead of his companion Oddrock, the purple rock, we see a small girl who seems to be a younger version of Pauline or someone related to Pauline riding Donkey Kong. And so it seems Pauline in some way may also play a role in the overall adventure and story of Bananza, where there may be some room to offer in some new costumes here. So it actually makes a lot of sense to incorporate costumes from Bananza for both DK and Pauline in Mario Kart World as a free update and cross-promotion for these games. And then Diddy Kong, perhaps he has a new design that we're going to see in Bananza, and they're saving that as a big reveal in lead up to release, or perhaps when the game comes out, and this character, perhaps along with other characters, could be part of an update, be it free or paid DLC, that part's debatable, in Mario Kart World in the not so distant future, also as cross-promotion for both of these games. To me, this seems like the most obvious path that they're going to go in, especially considering the comments from Mario Kart World producer Kosuke Yabuki. So, I believe Nintendo has a plan here for Diddy Kong, and I do think these costumes will be updated here, and it's all a part of the lead-up to Donkey Kong Bananza. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.